So a very common problem that a lot of my students have, especially beginner ones, when you're first learning to use a guitar pick and whatnot, but also more experienced guitarists can benefit from learning these things too. So the problem is picking accuracy. Right, when you first use a pick, oftentimes it's hard to pluck the right string, and then a lot of students will be like, I'll just play with my fingers, it's easier because playing with the pick will feel weird and a bit uncoordinated at first. But it's one of those things you just got to stick with, and eventually it becomes second nature, and it allows you to play a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do with your fingers, especially if you're wanting to play any kind. Let me get this recording actually. I need this. Especially if you're playing any kind of rock music, blues, R&B, just any genre, really. It's going to be helpful if you're able to use a pick. So there's a couple of things or a couple of ideas that you can use to really help with your picking accuracy. So first of all, I'm kind of assuming you know how to hold a pick. If you don't, I'll just show you quickly here. Okay, you want to make a hook with your finger, then you put the pick on the side and put your thumb down. Right, I can get more into detail of that in another video if you need it, but for now we'll just continue. So a way that I like to explain holding a guitar pick that tends to stick with students well and that make them understand it a bit better, bit of an analogy, is if I got what I get them to do. Actually, let me angle this so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, we're back after some technical issues, and by that I mean I just couldn't figure out how to use a phone tripod. But so what I get them to do is write their name on the paper. Okay, just any size, anywhere on the paper they want. So they do it. All right, that's my name. Cool. And it's also similar handwriting as that of a 10-year-old, which I'm just doing for the purposes of this video, obviously. So they write their name like that, and then I get them to do it again, but without resting their hand on the paper at all. Right, so the hand up like this. They try to do it. And it ends up that the second one is not as legible, not as good handwriting, okay? So that's the first thing, right? We want our hand anchored when we're writing, as it makes it much more difficult if it is not, because we don't have as much balance. Okay, so there's the first tip with holding a guitar pick. When you're playing the strings, you actually, let me angle this again. When you're playing the strings, you want to have your hand anchored. Oh, you want to have... Sorry, fellas, I'm just really having a hard time with this tripod, but we're back. You want to have your hand anchored on the guitar. Now, if I was, for example, playing the high E string, like this, you'll notice I have my hand anchored on all the strings above it, okay? See? It's not floating in the air like this. It's anchored like that. I'm actually kind of resting this part of my hand, and I'll sometimes do that depending on what I'm playing, but more often than not, it's this part. Right? Now this solves a couple of problems. It solves the problem of oftentimes if your hand's up like this, you can really like overshoot the string or your picking hand goes really far away from the string after you play it. Obviously very inefficient if you're wanting to play anything fast. So as I go down picking the strings, I'm just moving my hand up with it, okay? Still resting on the strings above. And then eventually once I get to the like A and E string or the lower strings, I either rest my hand up on the guitar like this, or I'll rest it back here on the bridge, okay, using more the side of my hand. Does that make sense? Hopefully that's making sense. So you want to have your hand anchored on the guitar somewhere, and again, this will feel a bit weird at first, but you just got to stick with it, okay? The amount of people that, and it's more experienced people as well that normally do this, but they're like, oh, I have trouble playing the right string, I'm having trouble with my picking hand, and it's all floating in the air like this. And then I suggest resting their hand on the string, and they do it for like 5 seconds, and then they're like, no, it feels weird, I hate it, I'm not doing it. And it's like, man, this stuff like it takes a bit of time to get familiar with. Anyway, so that's the first tip, resting the hand. Now, back to the writing, okay? I'll probably mess this up again, trying to angle the camera. Here we go. Okay, so back to the writing. Again, writing your name normally. Now, the second tip is, you'll notice I was holding the very end of the pen. Okay, if I tried to write holding the very top like this, all of a sudden, once again, becomes super difficult. Okay, so that is the next tip that relates into holding a pick. When you're holding a pick, you'll notice if I show it, all right, I'm just letting the very end poke out. I'm not holding the very top like this. The problem when you hold the top like this is not only will you have less control, because it just takes longer for your like action of your hand picking and then the actual tip of the pick to pick the string, because it it's just more distance between the two things happening, is your pick will get like caught under the strings, you'll find, which is a super common problem. So if I do that, you'll see, try to get it a bit closer, if I hold the very top, my pick gets really caught, right? It makes that kind of pinging, that really pinging sound, which you hear often with new guitar players. But if I hold it, just have the very tip poking out and do it, way smoother. Right, again, I'll try to show that. Right, a lot more efficient than that. Okay, so those are two things that is a really good start to improving your picking hand. So first of all, again, just like with holding the pen, having your hand anchored on the strings or on the guitar once you get to the very top. And the second one is just making sure you're showing as little of the guitar pick as you can get away with while still producing sound and not just scraping your fingers along the strings like that. I hope this is making sense, and a way to apply this, or just a good way to practice it that I'll get students to do, is just set a stopwatch on your phone and just spend 1 minute as your warm-up, say, before you actually play, just picking each string like this. Right, making sure you're resting the hand, showing just the tip of the guitar pick. You can start with just down picks, then you can start going up as well, and just making sure it's very efficient, making sure we're not doing this or having our hand floating in the air or anything like that. Right, so just being aware of it. And you go 1 minute, then you switch to the next string. 1 minute on that. And what this is doing, 1 minute on that, what this is doing is just building up muscle memory and getting used to the motion, because again, this stuff isn't just going to feel supernatural straight away, and you might not be able to apply it to all the songs you've been doing, but in the long run, it'll pay off. So I hope you got something out of that. Give it a go. Let me know what you think in the comments, if it worked for you, if it didn't work for you. And also if you have any other questions on anything guitar related, because I will be uploading more lessons to this channel, and a lot of it will just be common questions or problems that students have, because I guess if they're having those problems, there's probably people on the internet that are having those problems too. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.